You've seen the headlines, you've heard the chatter. The Jeffrey Epstein case has been absolutely everywhere. But with so much noise and, let's be honest, so much misinformation, it's really easy to get lost.
So as I mentioned in my last explainer on this, we got a pretty good overview of the Epstein files, but wow, there's so much that's still uncovered. So today, we're gonna dig into the darker cases, the big names, and really go beyond the headlines to look at the actual sworn testimony, because the reality here, it is way more complex than just a simple list.
So, what we're really talking about when we say the Epstein files is this enormous collection of over 3.5 million pages of legal documents. Now, most of these come from a 2015 civil lawsuit that a victim, Virginia Giuffre, filed against Ghislaine Maxwell. Think about that. Because the criminal justice system didn't really act, this defamation case became the main way to find the truth, forcing people to actually testify under oath. So let's be super clear. This was not some criminal client list that the FBI found in a raid. These are sworn depositions, their evidence, all gathered as part of a civil case, a mission to drag the truth into the light.
How did all these sealed documents even see the light of day? Well, their journey to us was a legal battle that stretched on for almost a decade. Let's trace the path that finally got them released. It all really kicked off back in 2015. That's when Virginia Giuffre filed her defamation lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell. A few years later, in 2020, a judge ordered that records from that very case should be unsealed. But the real turning point, that was in 2022, when Maxwell finally gave up her fight to keep the identities of several John Does, those are people kept anonymous in the case, secret. And that decision is what paved the way for the first huge wave of documents to finally be released in early 2024. And here is the key takeaway. Context is everything. Just because someone's name is in the documents does not mean they are accused of a crime. It's all about how and why they are mentioned. For example, Bill Clinton's name pops up over 50 times, usually with Epstein calling him a good friend. Donald Trump is mentioned in connection with a visit to one of his casinos back in 2001. But then you have Prince Andrew, who is directly accused of groping a victim, Johannes Sjoberg. And then there's this really bizarre one. The physicist Stephen Hawking is named in an email from Epstein to Maxwell where they talk about disproving a claim about an underage orgy. So you see, every mention carries a completely different weight and meaning.
And her testimony, along with others, spells out the cold, methodical tactics they use to recruit girls. It would start with a fake job offer, maybe for a butler or house staff. Then, they would lure young women in with these phony promises of modeling jobs for brands like Victoria's Secret. From there, the role would slowly morph into providing massages. And then, in this truly sick final twist, they would offer the victims money to go out and recruit more girls, turning them into unwilling parts of this cycle of abuse. For all the legal jargon and all the famous names, it's the words of the victims themselves that are just the most powerful. This quote from Johannes Sjoberg's deposition, it's chilling. She testified that Epstein told her he needed to have 3 orgasms a day. It's just a brutal, stark reminder of the human cost at the absolute center of this whole story.
Sjoberg describes this just awful incident involving a puppet. She states, and I'm quoting directly here, "He put his hand on my breast and Prince Andrew was sitting right next to him and he was laughing." I mean, that is just a stark, graphic allegation, and it's right there at the very core of these files.
Sjoberg's deposition also includes other really notable claims. She testified under oath that Jeffrey Epstein once told her that former President Bill Clinton, quote, likes them young when referring to girls. Again, this isn't a rumor, it's an allegation contained within a sworn legal deposition that's now part of the public record.
And all of this just raises a huge question, right? How did a system this organized run for so long right under everyone's noses? Well, the answer is a story about a system of impunity, and it explains exactly why he wasn't stopped so much sooner. I mean, just look at this timeline of missed chances. It is staggering. Back in 2007, federal prosecutors actually drew up a 53-page indictment with serious sex trafficking charges, but it was just abandoned. Instead, in 2008, Epstein got that infamous non-prosecution deal, letting him plead to way lesser state charges. And what came next? A full decade of what experts now call enforcement paralysis.
So why did the system fail so spectacularly? The documents? They really paint a picture of a system that was broken at pretty much every level. You had local police getting totally frustrated by what they saw as Epstein's special treatment. You had federal prosecutors who were seen as risk-averse, afraid to take on a big case. On top of that, there was just an abject lack of communication between all the different agencies. And the money? Financial institutions were just letting millions in suspicious transactions slide. That reputational armor we talked about, it wasn't just for show. It helped create the very impunity that let this all happen.
This total system failure created, as you can imagine, immense public pressure for answers. And that pressure started a whole new chapter in this story, the fight for transparency, the fight to force these hidden files out into the open.
And that whole fight led to something pretty much unheard of, the Epstein Files Transparency Act. This was a landmark law, and it was passed by a Congress that was basically fed up with the Department of Justice. It mandated the release of everything, all the documents, files, records, videos, images, everything connected to the investigations.
So, after millions of pages, countless headlines, and these profound, infuriating institutional failures, what do these files truly reveal? What's the final takeaway here?
I think a forensic analysis of all these disclosures sums it up perfectly. What was uncovered was, and I'm quoting here, not merely individual depravity, but a structured system of facilitation and institutional willful blindness. This was never ever just about one evil man. It was about the entire network that enabled him, and all the powerful institutions that chose to look the other way.
So the files have exposed the system, they've exposed the network, and they've exposed the failures. And that leaves all of us with one last massive question. Now that so much is finally out in the light, will accountability ever follow?